Welcome to the Reinventing the White Coat podcast, where we delve into conversations aimed at helping you foster a healthy relationship with your career and yourself. If you're a physician feeling unfulfilled or burned out, or want to prevent yourself from going down that path, then this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jennifer Shaer, pediatrician, chief wellness officer, and executive and life coach. Sit back and relax as we explore ways to live your best life and have a career in medicine. Today, I welcome Dr. Mary Leung, who is an adult hematology oncology specialist and also is a physician coach. And so I really am happy to have a fellow physician coach on the podcast today.
And thank you for having me.
All right, Mary. So listen, when we first sort of met virtually, I was so impressed with your ability to practice full time and also be so present and calm. And interestingly, a couple episodes ago, I had a conversation with one of my partners. His name is Dr. Eric Levine, and he was telling me as he was listening to the podcast, he wanted to hear more from people who were reinventing themselves more on the inside, so to speak, people who were actually doing the same thing and were having transformation. And I told him it was sort of like having a show about nothing, but that's really great. And he was doing that. And you also have a sort of a similar story. So if you wouldn't mind starting with telling me about your journey. Why did you become a doctor? How did you get to where you are?
All right. Okay. So I actually wanted to become a doctor simply because I wanted to help people. And I think when I was growing up, I was exposed to my parents. They were both doctors. I mean, they're retired now. And when we were home, I grew up in Hong Kong, and I when we were home, they would be so enthusiastic and excited about talking about patient care, how they could help people, and my parents would kind of like pick each other's brains, and they just had so much joy helping people. So I thought, oh, okay, that's what I wanted to do too. And they never forced me into medicine. And in fact, my two other siblings, they're not in medicine at all. So at a very young age, I don't even remember when, less than 10 years old probably, that I decided that I wanted to become a doctor. So I
Yeah.
think
That's so
after that,
inspiring,
yeah.
though. Honestly, Mary, like today, I feel like so many doctors are discouraging their children from becoming doctors. It's nice that you had that positive role model. Were they internists?
Um, yes, and so my mom worked as a family physician,
Mhm.
and my father did actually. I guess he was pediatrics and and specialized in pediatric GI.
Uh-huh.
So their so-called retirement, it's still I think my dad is still going around lecturing people
Love it. Do they live
and
in New
yeah,
York now with you, or are they
no,
still?
they're in Hong Kong.
Oh, wow. I wonder, I would have a whole other podcast to talk to you about what healthcare is like there, but that's a whole other.
Yeah.
Okay, so you decided to go to med school, and then what?
Yeah, and then so it was a pretty straightforward path, med school, and then I think earlier on I decided to get into internal medicine, because I thought that there were a lot of different options afterwards, either being the internist or getting more in depth in subspecializing in something else.
Mhm.
And all the while, I have in mind that I went into medicine besides helping people. The way that I enjoyed helping was to really develop a long-term relationship, a longitudinal relationship
Yeah.
with the patient. I wanted to get to know them as a person, and to really not just labeling them as cases or
Right.
they're with the diseases. So that's what I wanted. And then so
Wait,
come
before you
yes.
go on, I want to ask you because you said, oh, it was sort of a straightforward course. Okay, maybe, except for the fact that at some point along that course, you moved countries. Like,
Well, okay,
where did you go to med school? I mean,
backtrack.
yeah.
Um, so I actually I studied in Hong Kong up till 11th grade.
Okay.
And I grew up at the time that it was around the time that Hong Kong when it was a British colony and it was about to, change back to being part of China. And
Mhm.
so a lot of my friends actually either immigrated to, elsewhere like Canada, the U.S., Australia, you name it. And and at that time, my parents also thought that it would be a better learning opportunity to study abroad, in the U.S. So um, actually, I wanted to leave after 10th grade, and my mom did not think that I was mature enough. So then a year later, all of a sudden, she thought that I was mature enough. So I applied to two boarding schools
Okay.
in the East Coast, got accepted, and I chose one that
Mhm.
some of my friends were already there, and so I went there in 12th grade with
Got it.
it was actually a very big challenging experience because I went from I mean I've always learned English
Hmm.
growing up, but it was never spoken outside of English class.
Right.
Um, I used English textbooks, but we would still speak in Cantonese,
Hmm.
with my friends, with the teachers. So it was a big change, and I thought that I should be taking all AP classes. So I did, and and I had to learn American history because it was mandatory thing to do.
Right. Right.
So I was doing all that and had to apply for colleges.
Wow. Good for you. Not an easy path. Okay, so you faced that challenge head on. You went off to college and med school. Where did you do med school and then residency?
Yeah, so I went to University of Buffalo
Hmm.
for medical school. So I went from no snow in Hong Kong to well, actually, I went to undergrad. I went to Madison, Wisconsin. So that was very cold and quite a bit of snow, but not as much snow as Buffalo. So
Yeah,
all the snow that I wanted.
you made up
And
for your whole life right there.
yeah, and so, that's where I met my now husband,
Okay.
and,
He's
he
he's a
was in
doctor as
dental
well.
school. Dental school.
Oh, dental
Yeah,
school.
so he's
Okay.
a dentist, and, so he is from New York, Long Island,
Hmm.
so here I am
Yeah,
and
we're
doing
both here. It's
residency.
so great that
Yeah,
we're both here. Okay, so you went to med school, you wanted relationships with patients.
yeah.
Um, so internal medicine became a natural path for you.
Mhm.
And then heme-onc, though, boy, I mean, talk about a field that can be heavy. How'd you choose that?
I think a big part of it was, from my grandmother. When I was graduating college, she, uh she just all of a sudden fell ill and and had to go to the hospital. And looking back, she was actually gradually losing weight. And I guess no one really noticed because we would be seeing her every so often. I mean, I was already studying, in the US and going back to Hong Kong to see her. I guess I didn't really think too much of it. And then just to find out that when she went in the hospital, she had some kind of metastatic cancer that her bones were all eaten up and her
Mm.
calcium level was very high. We didn't really know what kind of cancer it was. It didn't look like a multiple myeloma, but it wasn't important now. Um, and so she actually passed away within 10 days
Oh,
of her being admitted to the hospital. So I
that
thought
drew you
that
to it, huh? That drew you to the specialty.
yeah, so I thought that, well, if I could help, patients and their families, during this journey. Because usually, in oncology is a more, it's a longer course
Mhm.
usually.
Yes.
Of course, everyone is different. And if I can just contribute something, to help the patients and the families' lives, or, help them feel better, I think, that is such a fulfilling and such a, um, really, I guess it brings me joy to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's amazing that you say that. I think about um, doctors have just as many varied interests as other people in the world, right? There are people who are just so drawn to, here's a broken bone, let me fix it. And then there are people like you who just want to help the individual heal as they go through their journey. You probably lose patients all the time, and that to you isn't necessarily a failure per se. It's how you show up for the family. That's just so beautiful.
I have learned even from just learning from life coaching that there are things that we can control and things that we cannot control. And things that we can control is I can do my best to
Right.
and show up my best for my patients. I I use the most standard of care for my patients with some open-mindedness
Yeah.
to fit the individual's needs. And I think that's what I can control. The outcomes I cannot control.
Yes.
And I keep telling patients that too. And it's just amazing to see how different patients react differently because of how they think about things. Some people are they're just always grateful for the littlest things, or when they're sick, when they're, even throwing up all the time. They're so grateful for everything, for the staff, for the doctors, for, what they're experiencing. And then there's just some patients who are just, really complaining all the time. And those are the more challenging patients
Yeah.
to take care of, and challenging to really reciprocate with them with the love that I want to
Yeah.
give them.
Mary, do you see, and I know this isn't a scientific answer, this is more sort of your general sense, and I'll tell you why I'm asking this, but do you generally get a sense that the people with the more positive outlook and the sort of spiritual beliefs, whether it's religious or other sort of spiritual, do you see them having better outcomes?
Um, I'm laughing because I think there's a joke, but it's not really a joke. That it seems like it's probably, not statistically studied.
Right.
That seems like nice people have bad disease.
Right.
That's what we always say. That being said, is I do feel that people who have a more pleasant or positive attitude, they cope better.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're sicker. Like, say, if I really have to imagine two people with very similar conditions, the the emotionally more stable and have experiencing more pleasant emotions patient actually deal with things better, and if families deal with things better.
Yeah, it makes me think about the difference between pain versus suffering, right? Having cancer is a painful process, but how much you bring suffering to that and the mental chatter about how miserable you are and how you're going to get through it can make it so much worse. But the
Yeah.
reason I was asking was I actually just listened to, the US Surgeon General. He has a podcast, and I was listening to a recent episode, and he actually interviewed um, gosh, I can't remember the doctor's name. She was a PhD, a psychologist, and she actually did had a conversation about this spirituality and this like scientific evidence behind the spiritual awakened mind. It just blows my mind that science is actually sort of connecting with spirituality in that way. And I thought, who better than someone who's in end of life world might see that type of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think people are, you know, they're more spiritually connected and just focus more on gratitude. They're just more, um, they accept things easier, and they're more at peace in general.
Yeah. All right. So tell me, Mary, I know one of the reasons why you went into coaching, well, you could tell me the story, but you were feeling a little bit burned out yourself in your career. Tell me a bit about that.
I would say probably a lot burned out. Yeah, um, so after graduating fellowship, I just got my, very first job in this group practice, just one specialty, heme-onc, a group practice, and it was a private practice. And I'm actually still in the same job, except right now it's part of the hospital system. Anyway, so I was kind of thrown into getting more and more patients very in a very short period of time because within 3 months, one of the partners retired, and so it went from 6 people to 5 people, including me. And then I was just seeing 20 some patients a day. I mean, initially, I think for the first couple of years, we were just using paper charts. Yes,
Mhm.
there's such a thing called paper charts, and and it wasn't such a burden. And then, of course, then we switch into the electronic, medical record system, and then I was still, seeing, these many patients, and I found myself really, trying to keep the patient's schedule as closely as possible. And I was sacrificing myself to write the charts, their patient charts later. So what it translated to was really, even though my last patient was supposed to finish around 4-ish, and I start seeing patients at 8 o'clock, I ended up writing the patient chart past 7 o'clock. And a lot of times I would still be not done, but I wanted to go home to see my kids. I mean,
Yeah.
they're, teenagers now, but still
Yeah.
at
Did they
that
want to see
time,
you? You might want to see them, but
I still want to, I think they're still good. They still want to spend some time with me, quality time. And so at that time, I really, I wanted to read them bedtime stories. I wanted to, and so I, I went home bringing work home,
hmm
and I was already tired and I was frustrated. I was angry because I didn't sign up for this. I
right.
signed up
You
to have a
specifically
full-time.
said at the beginning you wanted to spend time with people.
Yes, and because I was so burned out, I was so drained that I was just living in a survival mode. I was just like, how could I get through the day without dying?
Yeah.
Really physically, emotionally, and mentally. And so I didn't really have the mental capacity to fully engage with my patients. I mean,
hmm
I would still try my best and do my best to take care of the patients, but it was not that interaction that I valued. That
Yeah.
because I just couldn't give because I
hmm
didn't have anything to give. And
Yeah.
so fast forward to the pandemic.
hmm
And the pandemic, of course, no one wanted the pandemic, but there's always something good coming
Right.
out of something bad. And the good thing for me was I had a taste of going home on time.
Why did people? Because I would think that heme-onc didn't decrease volume. I mean, people, if you have cancer, you still have to see the doctor.
Correct. And so because I'm also seeing a benign hematology patients,
Got it.
so I see a mix. So during the heat of the pandemic, I was just seeing about maybe a third
Oh,
of the patients.
yeah.
And we kind of cut down even for oncology patients. If they were just not absolutely necessary to get the chemo, we kind of like switch it to oral, or like
Yeah.
postpone their treatment, things
hmm
like that. So I was going home on time,
Yeah.
and actually earlier than on time. And I thought that was really, really amazing.
Yeah. All right.
Just
So a taste of what being a doctor could really be, but you were stuck in this system. You knew it was going to go back. I assume you knew it was going to go back. What did you do? How did you make sense of all that?
I didn't think that far at that time. And so during that time, I had time to browse the internet. I
Yeah.
mean, before that, I didn't even have my own Facebook page. And so I came across this uh, physician kind of like conference, virtual conference, and that's I was like, oh, let's check it out. They're talking about physicians doing things, work outside of medicine,
Hmm.
and that's when I came across something called life coaching. I was like, wow, that's interesting.
Uh-huh.
And because I was so desperate before the pandemic that I thought, well, I needed to, I wanted to try something
Mhm.
to change my life, to see if I could at least feel better,
Yeah.
and so I just made the leap and I joined a women physicians coaching program,
Uh-huh.
and then so it just all made sense to me, how really our situations affect how we think about things and how we feel, and of course, we act upon our emotions, and how we act kind of determines what results we get. So I thought, how come no one taught me these things?
Yeah.
So simple. And so at the same time, because I wanted to learn more about life coaching, I signed up for a certification program about, in life coaching. So then I was really, really grateful that the pandemic gave me the opportunity and the time
Mhm.
to do both of those things. And so then I became a life coach. And during that time, I was also working with my own coach to say, hey, my biggest problem was, not going home on time. I was, charting late nights
Yeah.
into weekends. And so working with the coach, really the biggest thing was to change how I thought about things. And so within about 3 months, and also around that time, I was going back to full patient load,
Okay.
to seeing 20 some patients on average a day, that I was able to go home by 5-ish.
So so fine. So coaching can help you change your mindset around charting, but how did it help you practically finish your charts?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is to remember the why. Why why do you want to finish your chart on time? So for me, it was I wanted to finish on time so that I could go home and spend more time with my family.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of the start of my driving force.
Okay.
And because of that, then I started to, you know, I think the other very important thing is to believe that it's possible
Yeah.
to finish on time, even though in the beginning I didn't think that it was possible, but there was like this tiny little hope that it is
Yeah.
possible. Because if you don't have that hope, you won't want to work toward it.
Yeah. I always like
It's
the
kind
saying, whether you believe, I don't know who said it, but someone, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
right,
And you
exactly.
make your own reality. It's not easy figuring out strategies on how to finish your charts on time. It is not. But if you have a strong enough why, is what you're saying, then you figure it
Mhm.
out.
Yes, yes, and you start with just little steps. Really, even though I know that my ultimate goal was to go home at 5, it was too unrealistic for me
Yeah.
to imagine that in the beginning. So I
Mhm.
thought, okay, instead of past 7 with my charts, still undone, then maybe I could go home by 7 with everything done.
Yeah.
And so after I could do that, then I'm like, okay, maybe 6:30, so just little increments at that time. And of course, there's always that saying that if you want your results to be different, you do things differently.
Right.
So so then, it's one of the most important things is, besides the mindset, is really to that I analyzed how my day went,
Yeah.
and what was the, biggest obstacle, of, me finishing up on time. I guess there were really several things, and I hope to share this here to help
Yes,
other
please. I
physicians.
know this is probably because in my role, um, it's probably the biggest complaint I hear from physicians, myself included. Charting is just the bane of all of our existence. So if you have some
That was
practical
exactly my
tips,
sentence.
really, please, if you have any practical tips and tricks, have at it.
Yeah, so for outpatients,
Yeah,
because the schedule is pretty much set. I mean, yeah, there's sometimes surprises, and sometimes you may have patients that may take you more time, especially in my field,
yeah.
if there is progression of disease and all. So I think very importantly is to start your day thinking that you're going to finish on time. Just get that, and no matter what happens, because there are going to be surprises, and,
Hmm.
and just take into account that there are going to be unexpected things to happen. So when it happens, you're kind of already ready for it. Okay, so that's kind of like how you start your day. And the other thing that is very important is to I think most of us have kind of like a little team working with us,
Hmm.
be it the nurse or nurse practitioner, PAs, and medical assistants, the front desk staff. And I think it is a great practice to even just do a little quick morning huddle
Yes.
with your little team,
Hmm.
and just I think for me is to really to let them know, because I prepare beforehand, that it's like,
Yes.
okay, these are the patients I could see, or who needs an injection, who needs to set up for chemo, things like that. So I give them heads up that, okay, these are those few patients that we need to pay more attention to. And I always tell them that it's going to be a good day, we're going to finish on time, and just really spread that positive attitude, because I think how you show up really affects other people.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm always, well, since coaching, I think I'm definitely a lot more grateful for things
Hmm.
that happen to me. I mean, I wake up being grateful for another day, and just little things that I'm grateful for, and it just feels so, it's such a joy to be grateful. And
Yeah.
I think starting with that, and so during the day, the most effective way that I find is really to see the patient and do the chart.
Hmm.
And what stopped me in the past was my belief that I had to keep my patient's schedule on time,
Right.
and so I sacrificed myself.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when I was already very tired, I still have what, 10 charts to write, and my brain was shutting down,
Yeah.
mentally drained, and I would be taking 2 or even 3 times longer to
Right.
write that same chart.
You're so right. When you put it off, it takes because then you have to remember, and it is very, very challenging to keep a patient waiting to finish your chart. That's one of um, my biggest sort of obstacles. And pediatrics is much more volume based, and you want to engage with the patient. But you are
Yeah,
so right on all these points, and I agree also about the um, as as is said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? I mean, if you can do a huddle or get to work on time, right? Or even a little bit early so that you can review those charts or review them the night before. It sets you up for success. Um, so you were able to, Mary, go back to a full-time
mhm.
schedule, full-time patients, and you no longer have that burnout that you had before the pandemic. Like, look at you, you're like glowing.
Thank you. No,
Medicine is lucky to have you.
I would say I'm not burned out. I mean, I'm human. I have emotions too. I would say that before coaching, my most common emotions, and my coach asked me this. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I had
Mhm.
emotions. um, uh, I was feeling really frustrated, stressed, overwhelmed, and angry. Those are my most common emotions. I think now my most common emotions, of course, I still feel the unpleasant emotions, but the most common ones I have right now is gratitude, joy, content, and love. And I just feel like, it's such an amazing feeling to experience most of the time. And I'm just happy to share with my patients, my families, and other physicians. And I think that it didn't happen overnight, but
Yeah.
it is possible. And I'm just an ordinary person.
Hmm. Yeah. Good for you. Um, so Mary, if people want to um, sort of have the transformation that you had, which really was an inside job, where do you recommend they get? I know you do coaching. Who do you work with? What suggestions do you have for people to sort of begin that mindset shift? And then after the mindset shift, to take some of the practical steps like you did to really
Mhm.
re-engage with their careers.
Yeah, so I think um, one important thing is really it's okay to ask for help.
Hmm.
I think a lot of physicians, myself included, in the past, that thought, "Oh, I could handle everything. I'm supposed to handle everything. I have all these different hats. Being a physician, mom, wife, daughter. All these things, and it's okay that you're, all those things, and ask for help." And I think that's the first step, and just to realize that what you need, and to recognize that if you're stressed and overwhelmed, and or even burned out, I think that that's the first step.
Yeah.
And to find help is, I'm that's where I'm serving other physicians, is to I help other physicians who are where I was. I help them to go home on time, to leave work at work,
Hmm.
and so that they can enjoy life outside of medicine, and also enjoy medicine again, because now I have the mental capacity to really fully engage in my patient encounter.
Yeah.
And I get to talk to them. I make small talks, and I don't spend extra hour to connect with them, but even just a couple minutes, they feel better after their visit with me, be it be
Yeah.
the oncology patients or the benign hematology patients. I mean, we even talk about self-improvement books, that I give a couple patients assignments to read.
Like, that's great. Now listen, I don't want to suggest to people who might be listening that this is only on you to change your mindset to do the coaching, then that your workplace might not need some changes on the outside, right? I mean,
Right, right.
decreasing volume and making changes where you can are a critical part of this journey.
Mhm.
But the work that you do, Mary, is amazing. And if people want to work with you, tell them how they can find you.
Yes, so you can check out my website called shiningwithgratitudemd.com, because I'm really full of gratitude.
Oh my God, that's so
And
perfect. You're literally shining with gratitude, right?
you can also email me at shiningwithgratitudemd@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook, Mary Leung, and on LinkedIn, Mary Leung MD.
All right, Mary. Well, thank you so much for spreading some of your gratitude with the listeners today. Um,
Thank you.
and I also want to, as I always do, thank the listeners for choosing to spend your precious time with us. And I hope to see all of you again for our next episode of Reinventing the White Coat. That's all for this episode of Reinventing the White Coat. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe now so you don't miss an episode. If you're interested in coaching or in being a guest on the podcast, you can reach out to me online at sharecoaching.com. Thanks for listening, and don't be afraid to live your best life.